Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take on Venezuela. Not making the news that it probably should be right now. The United States has taken a lot of escalatory steps over the past few weeks, and military strikes look increasingly plausible as a consequence. Go back to when President Trump designated the Venezuela cartel, Tren de Aragua, as a terrorist organization, and then specifically said that the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, is the leader of this group. Doubled the bounty on Maduro's head from 25 million to 50 million, and authorized the Department of Defense to use force to target cartels in Venezuela and Mexico. On top of that, just a few days ago, the Trump administration reiterated that the United States does not recognize Maduro as a head of state. Now, that's actually not new policy, but it's interesting that they decided they needed to say that. They wanted to say that publicly because, of course, if Trump did see him as a head of state, then he could not be targeted directly under U.S. law. And then most recently, the United States has sent a large military deployment to the coast of Venezuela, clearly meant to project U.S. power in the Western Hemisphere, and also to target cartels. It is significant. It's 3 guided missile destroyers and a bunch of other ships that are now steaming their way to Venezuela. Now, none of that means that Trump has to engage in military strikes, but there's an awful lot of dots being connected here. And Trump, of course, is also deeply frustrated that after significant efforts to bring the Russia-Ukraine conflict to fruition, that he is not being able to. And even after meeting Putin in Anchorage and saying there's going to be a meeting, now looks like that's all come for naught. There's not going to be a meeting. It's up to them. It's not up to me. I can't get it done, even though I said that this was going to be easy when I was president. That's what we're hearing from Trump. Well, this would send a pretty big message that on matters of national security, Trump is not to be trifled with. Venezuela, not a close friend of the Russians, but the Russians, of course, have provided some military support to Venezuela. They've provided technological support to Venezuela. They are generally, well aligned as countries, and so it would send a message there. It would also send a message in America's backyard that the United States is going to take this guy out and take him out because he's a terrorist. And now we're not talking about an invasion. We're not talking about U.S. troops on the ground. And we might not be talking about strikes directly against Maduro. It could just be strikes against the cartel itself, against military assets in Venezuela. And if the U.S. were to do that, I expect that the response from Venezuela would be pretty limited, like we saw from Iran. Why? Because there's massive military asymmetries in support of the United States. Now, that's very different from saying that this regime is about to crumble. And even if Maduro was killed, you wouldn't necessarily see the regime fall apart because the Venezuelan military is strong, is still well-funded, and has no interest in going anywhere. Trump's also been disappointed with the Venezuelan Democratic opposition, who he supported when he was president first time around, and it didn't go the way he wanted it to. But still, it's important. And it's important in part because Marco Rubio, who is not just Secretary of State, but also National Security Advisor and is organizing the most important meetings around U.S. national security, frequently without all of the principals in the room, is very hawkish personally on Venezuela and would love to see the back of this regime. So taking military strikes is something I think he would support as well. Now, there's hard to imagine that Trump would be interested in a big military adventure when he's trying to broker ceasefires in other places. So I think anything we would see would be akin to what the United States did in Iran. a big, sudden show of force, lots of strikes, Tomahawk missiles, bombers, you name it, but certainly not weeks and weeks of military engagement. Even a massive but sustained air campaign, I think, would be very surprising. So it'd be contained in that way. But there's no question that the military assets that you're putting in the region offer a lot more than what's required for naval interdiction of drug trafficking. So Trump is not just trying to say, I'm dealing with the cartels. He clearly is interested in projecting force more broadly against Maduro. And, you know, I think that Maduro is going to be very, very careful here. We've seen that in, Guyana, incredibly oil rich. Maduro has said that that's actually his territory. He's made claims on it, lots of saber rattling, but the United States, the Brits, and others have kept him from actually doing anything. He's just used it for domestic politics. This is all worth watching very carefully. The fact that President Trump and the United States have now labeled Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela, however illegitimate, however much a dictator, a narco-terrorist, is certainly a justification for moves against his regime. How broadly, how explosively, how imminently, I think that's an open question, but certainly something to watch much more carefully in the coming days and weeks. That's it for me. I'll talk to you all real soon.